Hey guys, I'm Buster Green, and I am a Gundam anime reviewer. And today I am going to review the Cucuruz Doan movie, which I have been hyping up on this channel for almost a year now. So yeah, miracle happened this weekend, and I got my hands on a bootleg Japanese copy of the Cucuruz Doan movie with English subtitles. And first things first, the movie was alright. If I'm being honest, I have a lot of very complicated feelings about it. So mega spoilers ahead, I'm just not holding back in this video. First things first, I didn't want to talk about this in build guide because I thought it was going to be a spoiler, but it turned out to not be a spoiler at all. I was told that Char Aznavour was going to be in this movie because Char sells money, but turns out he wasn't. Like, they were hyping up his appearance, they were hyping up that he'd have a new high mobility Zaku, but instead he shows up in a single flashback for barely a second and has barely one line of dialogue. I was very disappointed in this because I thought they were going to briefly touch on the Char versus Amuro fight in Gibraltar since they kept hyping that up over the year. And yeah, I really just expected Char to be in the mix, or at least be at a bar laughing at Amuro. Something like that, you know? But yeah, so first thing first, this movie takes place in the weird Gundam the Origin manga continuity, which I wasn't expecting, but I was prepared for. Because the previous Gundam the Origin OVA was a little bit more unclear about if they were using the TV continuity or the manga continuity, and if I'm being real, I think the previous OVA tried to be clever about it and sidestep it in a way to have it both ways, with the only major contradiction to the TV continuity being that gun tanks existed in the previous Origin OVA way too early. But meanwhile, this movie is full-on middle of chaotic manga continuity. So we have Bright in a blue space outfit. It seems like the white base has already been through Jaburo because they have a picture of them at Jaburo on the white base, just to make that clear. They also have Slegger, who they picked up in Jaburo, and the GM is already mass-produced. But on the flip side, they haven't fought the Battle of Odessa yet. Makube is ruling Earth with an iron fist. And they're heading to Belfast, where Kai is going to be horribly traumatized. So there's a lot of weird details to nail down, and it's very hard to place this movie in the overall Gundam timeline because of this confusion. All I can say is it feels like it takes place 60% through the general story. Alright, so let me quickly just start off with what I liked about this movie. First of all, Bray's an asshole in this movie, but he's a virtuous asshole, and that's basically in line with the way the character was in 0079. Bright does a lot of things you wouldn't expect him to do, but at the same time, of course he would do them based on the situation he's been put into. They also add a lot of comedy moments with Slager being a perv. I'm okay with this. And all the classic Gundam characters on the white base crew get a real chance to shine. Even Job John does a couple of things. Oh, and Hayato and Kai get beat up by a goat, which is weird. Oh, also, somehow everyone's mechas get wrecked in this movie, except the Gundam. The Gundam makes it out okay. But that's also kind of weird. I mean, I guess they repair them if it's just kind of unexpected and interesting, but I guess they needed stakes for a movie. Oh, and there's also a meaningless, indulgent prequel backstory about how Slager taught Sayla to use the core booster. But the funny thing is, Slager phrases it so weirdly and poorly that Sayla thinks he's propositioning her for butt sex, and then she slaps him in the face. It was goofy, but it was a joke. Anyway, I have to give the movie extreme praise for the way they redesigned the white base. Not only did they make the white base feel more aerodynamic, it feels like a real ship in a way that it never did before. And I can actually sense the density of the white base. I can actually appreciate how thick the walls are. You see the bathroom, there's a lot to take in if you're just an OCD spaceship obsessive. And so yeah, on top of that, this is the ultimate Zaku movie. The Zaku action in this movie is on point. They redesigned the Zaku slightly to where the first time I saw it, I thought it was the Zaku FZ, but actually it's just the classic Zaku, and they added some of the details from the FZ to the normal design, which was an interesting choice. Meanwhile, Cucuruz Doan himself, he's semi-fleshed out in this movie. They don't make him smarter, they make him more realistic. But at the same time, they explain his motivations much worse, which was very confusing for me, and in my opinion, one of the worst parts of the movie. Another new thing I have to praise is they added these new Xeon bad guys, the Brown Southern Cross team. They get some really cool introduction in scenes where they have like an OA FMS team vibe, and like they kill all these GMs in a city, and it's shown that they have like good teamwork and stuff. But in the end, they're stereotypical cannon fodder Xeon pilots with cookie cutter personality. There's this one guy with a lizard face. I'm just gonna call him Lizard Face. He's like a more evil, autistic version of Kai. Anyway, he's super obsessed with Cucuruz Doan and turning him into a meme, and therefore he's the first person Doan kills because he's annoying. Oh, also, all the Zaku versus Gundam fights, they're rendered in really good CGI, except for there's a few shots where the models look janky because they zoomed out the camera too much. Since I've been working on my own anime lately, I'm very mentally into anime right now in a way that I'm usually not so much. So, for example, like I can see the pencil shading in this anime, and like I don't think normal people can. Anyway, so I was kind of shocked at the end. Like, Amuro is fucking bloodthirsty in this movie, and like a way that I've never seen him like depicted before. It's not that he's like a highly effective killer, but he does go out of his way to like step on a dude with the Gundam, which was like kind of V-Gundam gruesome. This is like really Amuro Ray at the midpoint of his Gundam journey, where he's very angsty and slightly traumatized, and the movie tries to juxtapose Amuro against the orphans on the island and like kind of draw a clear line between him and normal teenagers. But on that note, probably one of my favorite and most interesting parts of the movie is that Amuro gets beat up by a freaking normal 16-year-old with just more muscles. And I love this moment because it just grounds Amuro as, even though he's like the new type Superman Messiah, even though he's the best at piloting Gundam, he can still get his ass beat by a linebacker from Detroit. So yeah, I laughed at that. But the movie adds way too many orphans. In the TV version, Doan had 3 orphans. In this one, he has like 20. And the only one that adds to the plot at all is the one that beats up Amuro. The rest of them are just there to be cute and sad and amusing. I don't know, like, my initial thoughts on the film were it was okay. The Gundam versus Zaku action was amazing. There were a few things that weren't very clear, though, and confused me, and I was surprised that this was literally a 2-hour adaptation of one episode of Gundam, but at the same time, it felt like it. It felt like they took a 20-minute episode and stretched it for 2 hours, because there were too many scenes that dragged, a lot of meaningless filler of just the orphans like dancing around and doing farm work. And it was just way too much, man. And on top of that, like, half of the movie is just like Amuro wandering around the island looking for his Gundam, which like in the original episode was only like a minute, but in this like movie he like does it twice, and it's like at least like a quarter of the movie. By the way, I gotta mention now, okay, so right after I finished the movie, I was like, I wonder what they changed. So I went back and I rewatched the original 1979 Cucuruz Doan's Island, and it made me hate this movie. Okay, so the original Cucuruz Doan's Island has 10 simple beats. They start off showing the gun parry. It's like, oh wow, the gun parry, you can buy it in toy stores. The movie does this too, but the movie does it like sensibly. In the show, the gun parry is just there being stupid. Then Amuro gets a distress call and finds 2 Federation pilots captured and dying on Doan's Island. He frees them, but then they insta-die for convenience sakes. Now, the movie also includes these 2 pilots, but the movie changes this scene in a good way, because the pilots are just instantly killed by Doan, and then the white base is sent to investigate the island and check it for Xeon deserters, which is what Doan is. So that's actually way more logical. So that I was actually good with. Then step 3, Amuro nearly kills some kids with his gun. The theme of this episode is that guns are bad. Step 4, Doan shows up and disarms Amuro because he hates gun and says guns are bad. Step 5, Doan fights Amuro in his core fighter, and Doan throws rocks at the core fighter because Doan wants to disarm the core fighter because Doan is so into gun control. Step 6, Amuro gets rescued by Doan and ends up chilling at his farm, and then wanders around the island for like a minute trying to find the core fighter, not fucking 20 minutes like in the movie. Then while Amuro's wandering around the island looking for the core fighter, he ends up being rescued by Laura, and then Doan has a PTSD flashback, reveals that he adopted the 3 orphans because he personally killed their parents, and he is deeply troubled and haunted by that. Step 9, suddenly out of nowhere, Doan's island gets attacked by Zaku's, but Doan repels them himself. And finally, step 10, Amuro gets the Gundam back, and he uses it to throw Doan Zaku into the ocean, because he's being a little bit of an asshole, and he's like, "Hey, Doan, people are attacking your island over the Zaku, and if you hate weapons so much, well, the Zaku is a giant weapon." And then after that, the children rightly curse out Amuro because he destroyed their island's sole form of self-defense. Amuro moves on, never thinks about this again. So, yeah, in that episode, only really 10 things happen. And the movie somehow stretches out those 10 things, repeats a few of them, and somehow completely erases the gun control message. Now, quick take. The 79 version has Ryu, because I guess Ryu must have been dead in the movie continuity by this time. And instead of Doan hiding the entire Gundam, because people want to see the Gundam, in the episode they just hide the core fighter because the animation team was sick, and they want to minimize drawing the Gundam. He also took more prisoners in the 0079 version, but because they immediately die after Amuro finds them, they were like so minor that I do think the movie cleaned that up. Also, Laura. Okay, so Laura in the show is clearly a child, or at least a girl around Amuro's age in the TV version. In the movie, she's aged up to be kind of Doan's pseudo-wife. Like, in the movie, she seems like she's 19, and in the show, she seems like she's 15. In the movie, it's implied that basically she wants to date Doan, but Doan's like not committed to having a relationship with her because she's too young. And then in the TV version, it's clear that Doan adopted 3 kids because he killed their parents. But in the movie, it's 20 kids, and I guess the motivation is the same. But in the TV version, they explain this like, Doan was like, "Oh God, what have I done?" He realized he was a monster. He was haunted by PTSD, and he had to do this to make it right. Whereas the movie completely undercuts this. It's just a vague flashback, and it's like, one day, Cucuruz Doan got tired of fighting and decided to collect orphans. Orphans are the new Pokemon. And it's like, what? Like, the movie does a really bad job of explaining why Doan collects these orphans. It's just like, the movie kind of just implies that he loves kids and he wants to keep kids innocent. Whereas the TV show, it's like, Doan realized that guns kill people. He had bad PTSD, and he realized that by killing these kids' parents, he was a monster. Like, the crazy thing is, like, the 79 version is better than the movie. Because in the 79 version, Doan is explained properly. He's explained that he has PTSD, he's a soldier that killed too many people with too many guns, and he's taking it out on the guns. He hates all guns. He's an anti-weapon, super woke, super pro-kids. It's very political, but that's the way Doan is. Whereas in the movie, it's just like, he decided that he hates all adults, so now he's going to kill any adult he sees, and he's going to let kids live with him. Like, it's like fucking crazy because, like, in the TV series, he's like an anti-gun activist, and in like the movie, he's like almost Michael Jackson. Like in the 79 version, he like straight up like confronts Amuro when he's like, "You can leave my island peacefully, but I will destroy your guns." And that's the core conflict because Amuro wants to keep his guns. Whereas in the movie, he's just like this isolationist, and he's like, they never say in the movie that he hates guns, just that he hates adults. And the only reason he saves Amuro is because he's 16. And then it's later revealed at the end of the movie that he was low-key protecting some Xeon nukes, and he has secretly sabotaged the nukes because he's still low-key anti-weapon, but he's anti-nukes, not anti-guns all over. So he's just not blatantly as anti-guns as he was in the 79 version. And I think that that's a detriment to this movie. Because if I'm being real, like, the original episode 15 of Gundam in the 70s has such a strong gun control message. There's even a point where Amuro actually shoots at the kids because he doesn't know they're kids, and Doan is like, "Fuck you, guns are bad, you just tried to kill my kids." And Amuro has to like reflect on this. Whereas in this movie, the message is just, nuclear weapons are bad. One idiot with nuclear weapons could blow up the entire world. Oh, and on that note, Makube decides to nuke the entire world because he gets insulted in a Zoom call. But later when Doan disarms the nukes and nothing blows up, Makube is happy about it. That was completely in line with Makube, so that was another thing I was good with. Makube is totally like a guy who like would try to nuke the world, but then also regret it later because he loves the world. But yeah, it's like crazy that in the 79 version, Doan also successfully single-handedly defends his island from everything until the Gundam throws his Zaku in the ocean. Whereas in the movie, they gave Amuro a little bit more to do, and Amuro defeats the last member of the Southern Cross team, so it's not like Amuro's completely cucked by Doan like he is in the episode, but I liked that he was cucked by Doan. It shows that Doan was like the only person to defeat Amuro. And like the other... Alright, so the last big change I have to comment on is... So the 79 episode and the movie end the same way. In both of them, Amuro casually throws Doan's Zaku into the ocean. But in the TV version, it's seen as a total dick move because Amuro's point was the island was being attacked by people investigating Doan's Zaku, so no Zaku, no problem. Whereas Doan and the kids were like, but yeah, if someone attacks this island again, now I can't defend it. Whereas in the movie, the Zaku is wrecked. So on top of that, with the nuclear weapons being gone, Doan was like, I guess, kind of protecting the weapons, not the kids. Although he said he was protecting the kids, I don't know. It was more complicated in the movie. But in the movie, it's more like, let me throw out this garbage for you. Although the kids still clock it as a dick move because the Zaku did protect the island. So, yeah, like, rewatching the TV episode honestly made me hate the movie. Because there were parts of the movie that just didn't make sense. And they didn't make sense because they needed you to know the message from the TV show, that they basically took it out and implied it, but at the same time they took it out. Like, literally, Doan's Island is the only episode that really like dives deep into real world issues. And it's like, hey, guns are bad. Hey, war is bad. Hey, if you abandon a war, are you a bad person? Like, that's the questions those episodes ask. And like, it goes so far as to be like, if you hate guns, you should destroy them yourselves. And all of that messaging is just gone in the movie for like fun popcorn action. And I really have to retroactively wonder if the main reason this episode got banned in the US was because it took such a controversial stance on that. And yeah, Gundam was airing in like the afternoons on Toonami, and like, it's weird for a cartoon to just be like, hey, if you hate guns, you should destroy guns. Actually, you know what? Kids watching Cartoon Network would have seen that and literally done it. So maybe that's why the episode got banned. Like, I never really like noticed that by now. I like really thought it was just like the bad animation and like, but then I was like, why did you ban this episode and not like the episode where like Zeon tries to blow up Gundam with a time bomb, or the one where like the white base needs to buy some salt? So anyway, here's my final take on both the episode and the movie right now. Doan's Island 2022. Pros. Glorious Zaku combat action. All the new combat, all the new content, all the new stuff in this movie is wonderful. And it has a surprisingly realistic sense of space to the anime. Like, not only do I get a sense of how big the white base is, I also get a really clear sense of how big Doan's Island is, and I kind of like know the whole island after watching the movie. It was a beautiful return to classic Gundam, and Amuro is a sympathetic, complicated boy murderer in this. Cons. Removing the gun control message makes Cucuruz Doan shallow and confusing, and honestly, for me, it ruined the movie. Also, the Zaku does not throw enough rocks. He throws like 2 rocks. Very disappointed on the rock front. Final score, 7 out of 10. Conversely, Doan's Island 1979. Pros. This is one of the most realistic episodes of classic Gundam, tackling gun control, PTSD, and AWOL soldiers. Cons. The animation sucks. Also cons. It's a blatant commercial for the Gunpowder. And Amuro is kind of a huge asshole in this episode. So yeah, I'm also going to give the 79 version a final score of 7 out of 10. And so yeah, ultimately, I'm at a loss with this one. I was really hoping the remake would be 100% better than the original and pretty much a replacement for it. but I don't think it's a replacement for it. I think it doesn't make sense that they removed Doan's gun control stance, and honestly, it's a massive missing puzzle piece in the movie. Because I just didn't get what Cucuruz Doan's full motivation was in the movie, because they just make it like he hates adults. Whereas in the show, it's clear he hates guns. And if you know this from watching the show, then the movie is definitely easier to swallow. But I forgot. I had to immediately watch the episode. I haven't watched this episode in 20 years. And just rewatching it, I realized that the movie omitted so much critical information from the storyline. It's amazing that they can stretch a 20-minute episode into a 2-hour movie and at the same time suck the core of the character out and make him mysterious but confusing. The show explains Cucuruz Doan better in 20 minutes than the movie does in 2 hours. And overall, I'm let down by the movie. The movie is excellent when it does anything new, but it's a bad remake of the worst episode of Gundam. Alright, that's all I gotta say. I'm Buster Green, and I am a Gundam. Good night.